Quick spoiler warning, I'm going to be talking about the hardest pre-update super boss of Expedition 33 and a very subtle story spoiler. Viewer discretion is advised. Big news guys, I made my no Lumina, no Parry, and no dodge Simon slaying team even better. If you watched my most recent long-form video, which, by the way, thank you everyone, I definitely didn't expect so many people to watch it. That being said, feel free to subscribe to the channel. I can't promise anything as interesting as that last video, but I've been having a lot of fun making stuff and I love to see people watching. But anyway, if you watched my most recent long-form video, I beat Simon using just Pictos, with no parrying or dodging. While I'm definitely happy with the strategy, there were a few things I didn't love about it. The biggest one being, there was luck involved. I had to reset the battle a couple of times because Simon decided to wipe out my A-team before I could start the stun lock. It was a little frustrating, but it worked out in the end, so I decided to clip it, ship it, and make a video. After posting it, I hung up my hat in regards to that Simon battle and decided to work on my next video, a short about the monolith. But then, a week after posting, a commenter emerged from the mists. Why didn't you use Overload to get Verso to rank A and gain all AP? You could have broken on Monoco's first turn and then start the loop without wasting so many turns waiting for Simon to attack Monoco. Thanks for that, Azkaz01. The truth is, I completely forgot about Overload. It's a skill that costs 6 AP and in return automatically brings Verso to rank A and refills his AP. Before I was relying on free game shots and Paradigm Shift, but that requires a lot more time and AP. With this move in mind, I realized that it's very possible to take out the luck aspect. Maybe with this move I can figure out a way to set up my team using only Pictos to take out Simon every single time, guaranteed. No luck involved. So I fired up the game and started cooking. Unfortunately, it's not as easy as just giving Verso Overload as one of his skills. Simon is too fast and gets a turn in, even with greater slow. But after a couple of hours of tweaking, I figured out a team. A team that can beat Simon no matter what he does. No luck required. I want to say something about Maelle before I talk about her role in this battle. I swear she's my favorite character. Since the game started, she was always the most interesting to me, and only became more and more interesting as the story went on. I think she's excellently written, and usually a powerhouse on the battlefield. That all being said, she's more useless than she was in my last video. Here's the Pictos. Nothing. Nada. Zilch. The only reason she's coming to the battle is because, if she didn't, she may automatically get put on the A-team accidentally. I even took away all her stats so that she had no chance of getting a turn. It just sped up the process. I could have given her the auto-death Pictos, but I wanted to be a tryhard and do the battle with the smallest amount of Pictos possible. I didn't even let her end her misery early. I gave her a top hat though. Lune's role is almost exactly the same as her role in the last video. The only difference is, I gave her the Breaking Death Pictos instead of Maelle. She has the weapon Coralim to make ice skills cost 1 less AP. In hindsight though, any weapon would work. Ice Lance is the only move she's going to use and it only costs 4 AP, which is how much she gets in the beginning of the battle. Her other two Pictos, First Strike and Greater Slow, allow her to show up for one turn and get the Ice Lance off to slow Simon enough for my A-team. Oh, and I also drained her stats to 0 so she has no chance of getting a second turn. Speaking of the A-team, let's talk about them. The A-team, while consisting of the same characters and stun lock loop strategy as last time, is quite a bit different. Let's start with Monoco. For his weapon, he has Bolaro equipped. In general, the weapon doesn't quite matter for Monoco, but I like this one for the AP boosts given by its level 10 and 20 passives. Using an upgraded skill gives 1 AP to all other allies, and Almighty Mask gives 2 AP to all allies. They aren't required, but the extra AP is nice for a specific reason that I'll explain during the battle. Monoco is the fastest character with a total of 4,198 speed. He gets his speed from his agility and luck stats, but most importantly, from his Pictos. The first is Sniper. This is the only one with any functionality outside of speed. He's going to use it to break Simon on his first turn. Besides that, he has Augmented First Strike and Energizing Attack 1. If you saw my last video, you'll notice that he doesn't have Faster Than Strong equipped anymore. That's simply because it's too slow and you need to be fast to get a turn in before Simon. We'll have to make do with Monoco only getting 1 turn at a time. As for his attacks, he has 2 equipped, Portia Energy and Hexaga Crush. Portia Energy, like the last video, is going to be how he spreads his AP around. I'll explain why he has Hexaga Crush equipped later during the battle. While Verso has the biggest change out of all the characters, he keeps his same weapon, Serum. Its level 4 passive gives +1 to all perfection gain, but can't reach rank S. This is what makes the stun lock possible, because the Endbringer skill requires rank A to reapply stun to the enemy. Let's look at his Pictos. That's right, no painted power. It was too slow, and I realized that Verso just needs to be around for the stun lock loop. He doesn't need to do all the damage. Getting more turns in to guarantee the loop is more important. That's why I built him to have 4006 speed. Still very fast, but importantly, slower than Monoco. Monoco needs to go first to break with Sniper. In other attempts, I tried giving Verso Sniper, but unfortunately he just wasn't fast enough with it. His slowest Pictos is Cheater. This one is absolutely necessary for this strategy. He needs to be able to use Overload on his first turn so that he can get right to rank A on his second and extend the stun. To make up for the lack of Cheater's speed, I used 2 of the fastest Pictos I had, Energizing Turn and AP Discount. Not only do they give crazy speed, they make getting AP a whole lot easier. For his moves, he has the ones I mentioned before, Overload, Endbringer, and Paradigm Shift. Overload helps get to rank A for the first stun loop, Endbringer reapplies stun, and Paradigm Shift helps build AP back on Verso's second turn. He also has a Marking Shot for reasons I'll explain later. Sciel is the last member of the A-team. She weirdly plays a flex role, both as an attacker and as a support character. For the former, she has the painted power Pictos. That's right, she's going to be doing all the damage. For the latter, she has greater rush for when she applies rush throughout the battle. Finally, she has trigger happy because it's the fastest Pictos I had left. Speaking of speed, she's the slowest character by far with 2827 speed. This doesn't matter too much, she still gets speed control in, just not as frequently. Also, since she's doing the vast majority of the damage, the battle just takes a little longer. Her weapon, like last time, is Lithicin, the Excalibur of the canvas. As a reminder, its level 4 and 20 passives are excellent for speed control and AP regeneration. Her level 4 passive reads, during Sun, all enemies have greater slow, and her level 20 passive reads, +3 AP on applying a buff or debuff once per turn. This allows all set to apply both greater rush from the Pictos and greater slow from the Sun charge. For her moves, she has All Set and Rush to set up speed control. She also has Delaying Slash and Fortune's Fury. Like the other new moves, I'll explain those during the battle. That's enough preamble. Let's just jump into it. Okay, one last thing before jumping directly into the battle. I want to clear up some confusion. Some of the comments in my last videos were asking if I skipped the second phase. The answer is no. When you go back to fight Simon after you've already defeated him, it drops you straight into phase 2. Phase 1 would work the same way, but I'm grateful that they cut it out. It made my construction of the team a lot easier. Anyway, let's start the battle. Like last battle, I'll be using pause and fast forward liberally. The battle starts the same way as my last battle. Lune uses Ice Lance to apply greater slow. Simon then attacks at light speed to knock out Lune and Maelle at the same time, which is super nice because it saves some time. Out comes the A-team. With the added speed, Monoco goes first. He starts off by shooting Simon to get the sniper break. He doesn't have the AP for Potia Energy, but an energy tint to Verso works just the same. Verso is up next. Verso uses the Forgotten About Overload skill to bring him to rank A and refill his AP. Then he uses Endbringer to start the stunlock loop before Simon gets a chance to move. Even though Simon is stunned, he gathers Chroma around Sciel to bring her to 1 HP. It doesn't quite matter, it just takes a little more time. No biggie. Sciel is up and she doesn't have the AP for All Set. That's why I brought Rush along. It works just the same as All Set in terms of speed control. Monoco's turn, he uses Potia Energy. This is why I use Bolaro, by the way. Because he's in Caster Mask, Potia Energy gives a bonus AP and Bolaro gives another bonus AP for using an upgraded skill. This brings Verso to 8 AP, which allows him to use Endbringer on the first turn. Again, this isn't required. He can use Paradigm Shift on his first turn, then Endbringer on his second. But always using Endbringer first was easier for the muscle memory. And it's a long battle, anything that makes life a little easier is welcome. Simon remains stunned, and Sciel is up next. She uses a Gradient Charge for the move Shadowbringer. It does high single target dark damage and applies a Foretell per hit. More importantly, it gives a Sun Charge. Then she follows up with All Set. I could theoretically use Rush, but using skills with a higher AP requirement builds the gradient bar quicker, and Sciel is going to use Shadowbringer each turn. Now let's hit fast forward again and zoom in on the health bar. I'm going to put in Simon's health bar from the battle in my last video below the health bar for this video. You'll notice that the health bar for this battle is draining a whole lot slower. This battle is going to take forever, right? Not quite. It's actually a little faster, only lasting 25 minutes. That's because Sciel is stacking up sun charges. When she builds up enough, she's going to take out Simon with one big hit. How many sun charges are enough? Well, I did a test run where I used 20 sun charges. Then I did some Microsoft Paint math. I started by taking Simon's health bar and measuring the pixel width of the entire thing. Then I measured the pixel width of the damage that was done. I divided the total pixel width of the health bar by the pixel width of the damage dealt to tell me how many more times damage I need to do to take away all of Simon's health. I then multiplied the 20 sun charges by that number to figure out what the magic number of sun charges was. I kid you not, here's my reaction to figuring out what that number was.
No way. What are the chances? Alright. Whatever, I guess we'll do it.
Needless to say, it's a nice number. Let's hop back into the battle. After running the loop over and over with Sciel getting 2 sun charges each time she plays, she eventually gets up to 69 sun charges. Verso uses Endbringer and Paradigm Shift to renew the stun and build back AP. Simon stays stunned. Monoco uses Potia Energy to spread the AP love around. Verso gets another turn before Sciel because he's so fast. He uses Endbringer and Paradigm Shift again to reset the loop. Sciel is up, and this is when things change. She uses Delaying Slash to bring her into Twilight Stance. It's supposed to delay Simon's next turn, but it doesn't seem to do much. I look into it a little further, so stick around till the end of the video if you want to hear some nerd stuff about turn order. Anyway, Monoco is up, so instead of Potia Energy, he uses Hexica Crush. This applies Defenseless to Simon, increasing the damage. Simon stays stunned, and Verso is up. He uses Marking Shot to put a mark on Simon and increase the damage even more. He then skips his turn to send it to Sciel. During her first Twilight turn, she uses Fortune's Fury to double her damage for next turn. Monoco uses Potia Energy to make sure everyone has AP, which in hindsight isn't actually necessary. Verso skips his next 2 turns. Simon stays stunned. Monoco skips his turn, and Sciel is up. She has double damage from Fortune's Fury and powerful from all set, while Simon is defenseless with a mark. She also has a 1750% damage multiplier from Twilight Stance. She uses her level 3 gradient skill End Slice to do almost 58 million damage without Pictos, ending Simon's misery, and in turn, ending the battle. Yeah, that wraps it up. Thanks so much for watching, especially if you made it this far. I was excited to be able to figure out a more solid and absolutely riskless strategy for this fight. I'm also happy that the fight was 5 minutes quicker than the first one. I was worried taking Painted Power off of Verso was going to slow everything down. That all being said, thanks again for watching and have a good one. Okay, so first thing I want to start with is the end of the battle. Sciel did just about 58 million damage with End Slice. The keen-minded among you may have noticed that Simon only has about 45 million HP. At first I thought my MS Paint math was wrong, but then I realized that Sciel likely just got a critical hit. Without a critical hit, End Slice would have done just about 38.5 million damage. The damage already done to Simon, which I got from subtracting the 57.7 million highest damage from the 66.4 million total damage, was about 8.7 million. Adding the 38.5 million to that brings me to 47.2 million, which is a lot closer to Simon's actual health pool. Now let's talk about Delaying Slash. I messed around with it before and I always knew it was a little finicky. I still don't really understand how it works, especially seeing it in action during this battle. When I used Delaying Slash, while it looked like it did nothing, it actually moved Verso's turn up like 7 turns later. Even more confusing, let's look at the last time Simon is stunned before Sciel finishes him off. The text reads, "Simon is stunned." I was totally expecting it to say Simon is no longer stunned because Verso didn't use Endbringer in that last loop, instead opting to keep Simon marked so Sciel does maximum damage. I think one of 2 things happened here. One, there were multiple times where Verso went twice before Simon, using Endbringer twice. It's possible multiple Endbringers stack for multiple stuns. I haven't been able to test this, so it could be super wrong. And 2, there's some weird interaction with Delaying Slash that I just don't understand. Regardless, if you have any idea what happened here, let me know. One more thing about Delaying Slash. The reason I used it is because when Sciel goes into Twilight Stance, the speed control gets mixed up. Look here after I use Delaying Slash. Simon loses Greater Slow. That's because I used a moon charge, which I guess deactivates the level 4 passive on Sciel's weapon. And even though Lithison's level 10 passive reads, during Twilight, all allies have greater rush and all enemies have greater slow. This doesn't activate until Twilight Stance is turned on, and that doesn't happen until the beginning of Sciel's next turn. So I chose to use Delaying Slash because I assumed it would give me a little more time before the speed control got all mixed up. One last thing, after some testing on a new target, psst, it's gonna be my next video, I actually learned that if Verso has 9 AP at the start of his turn and AP discount as one of his Pictos, you actually don't need the overload skill. 5 free aim shots and Paradigm Shift do the trick. Alright, that's actually all for now. Thanks for sticking around for all the nerd stuff. I wanted to talk about it but didn't want to bog down the video too much, so it lives here. Thanks again and have a good one.